The NFL may never happen for me. This may be my professional experience playing in the Canadian Football League, and then all of a sudden I got that interest from the NFL.
What was kind of the reaction of like, holy hell, I'm going back to my hometown team and I'm going to back up Steve Young?
I mean, it was really a dream come true, bringing tears to my eyes in the sense of that I'm going to be the guy running out onto the field that day. The team I grew up watching, idolizing Joe Montana, watching Super Bowls. Now all of a sudden I'm that guy.
3, 2, 1, yeah!
Welcome to Willing to Fail. I'm your host, Peyton Bennett, as usual. Today we have a very special guest. He was a quarterback in the NFL for 11 years. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler. And before his NFL career, he was a 4-time All-Star in the Canadian Football League, where he was also the Grey Cup champion and the MVP. So with no further ado, welcome to the show, Jeff Garcia. How are you?
I'm good, Peyton. Appreciate you having me on. Just getting my day going to the next step of picking up kids and becoming an Uber driver, a dad Uber driver, man. That's basically what my afternoons are like now.
I would have put that on the resume if I knew that before. So yeah, I was doing a little research on your journey. I mean, I remember you as a 49ers quarterback and Eagles quarterback and watching you play, and that was always fun. But doing a little more research before this interview, I see that your journey is crazier than I even knew. So there's no better place to start at the beginning. Like, you grew up in Gilroy, California. What was your childhood like, and what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, man, I grew up in a small town. Gilroy is like a farming community in the central coast of California, about 30 miles south of San Jose, just over the hill from coastal towns like Santa Cruz and Carmel, Monterey. And I grew up on a small farm, 4 acres. My family, we had cows, we had chickens, we had horses at one point. I grew up having to do chores, feeding cows, changing pipes, irrigating fields, working in the fields somewhat. My dad comes from a migrant background. His parents, my grandparents, immigrated from Mexico, from Jalisco, the state of Jalisco, San Juan de los Lagos. And so he was a first generation American. And what he knew was working in the fields at an early age, picking cucumbers, tomatoes, lettuce, whatever was in season. That was what they did for work and to sustain themselves. And so I was introduced to a little bit of that because my grandmother was still managing properties, working the fields well into her 70s. She was a diehard worker. And so I would spend times with her. My brother, my sister, and I would go out to the fields and pick with her and manage the fields, go around the countryside with her. And then my dad became a junior college football coach. So my dad was the head football coach at the junior college of my hometown called Gavilan Junior College. And he had been coaching there since the late 1960s, and then became the head coach in 1972, right around that time. I was 2 years old when he became the head coach there. And my brother and I, who was a year younger than me, I just remember at 4 or 5 years old, my mom dropping us off at the practices. And those 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, young men, were our role models in a lot of ways. Those were our idols. Those were our babysitters as well. They watched us on the field. Mom would drop us off at the practices and we'd run around the football field, picking up the ball, throwing it around, probably getting in the way at times. And the players would back us up and make sure we didn't interfere with the play or get run over. And that was a lot of my childhood, being around my dad, being around sports, being involved in some sort of a work ethic, growing up on a farm, having chores, having tasks to do every day. And, it was a good childhood for the most part. Unfortunately, we had some really sad, bad situations, accidents that happened in our family. And with me at a young age, I lost my brother to a drowning accident. He was 6 years old. I was 7. We were a year and 11 days apart. So he was my compadre, man. He was my best friend. And then a year, literally, and that was on Memorial Day weekend of 1977. We had gone up to the Mammoth Lakes in California, the Sierra Nevadas, and we were camping and fishing with some other families. And he just disappeared on us. Unfortunately, he must have fallen in the water in an area where it was fast rapids, moving too fast for him to stay above water, and got sucked underneath. So we lost him on a tragic day. A year and 2 months later, I lost my 5-year-old sister when she unfortunately fell out of the back of a pickup truck and suffered blows to her head, damage to her brain, and she just could not make it through in the hospital. And so our family going through two tragic experiences, it really tested us. My mom fell into a deep depression, which is understandable. Prior to even having me, she carried twin girls through 7 months of pregnancy, and her water broke, and she lost twin girls that lived for about 10 to 12 hours. This was in 1968, before technology could probably save them today. And so, knowing that my mom lost 4 out of her first 5 children, I mean, how do you go through that? How do you get through that? And me being a dad, having 4 kids myself, I know that I don't know how I would deal with losing one, let alone how many my parents lost. And, I mean, tragedy had to bring out something in us as a family. And whether it was the bond that was created between all of us that really came together, the family experiences. I think my outlet was playing sports, not to think about what I had just lost in a brother and a sister, but get involved in sports, stay active, develop friendships, relationships, all those things that would maybe take my mind off of questioning, questioning God, questioning why would this happen to our family, or why didn't He take me? Why wasn't I the one? How am I the lucky one to be here and not my brother or sister? And so, as an 8-year-old, questioning yourself with those things, and there wasn't therapy. I wasn't going to therapy as an 8-year-old back in 1978. That was for, families that really had problems or different problems. We didn't really look into that. I know my parents went through struggles. I mean, the fact that they're married still today at nearly 60 years of marriage is a testament to them going through some very, very hard times, some very difficult times. My dad was fortunate that, in a sense, he had a job that he had to maintain. He had a commitment that he had to go to on a daily basis. My mom, she was a stay-at-home mom at the time. Her purpose was raising kids, and she just lost 2 of her babies. And we added 2 more sisters. I have 2 younger sisters, 8 and 9 years younger than me, but she had to still be a mom to us 3 and get through the struggles that she was dealing with. So, it was very difficult, but in a lot of ways, unfortunately, we had to go through that. But the bond that we have as a family, somewhat because of the tragedies that we went through, and the bond that I have with my parents, the love and appreciation that I have for my mom, for my dad, how they've always been there uh, on my side, defending me, protecting me, pushing me, all the things. In a lot of ways, I think help contribute to who I became as a person and what I was able to accomplish in my life. I just took the mentality that no doesn't necessarily mean no. If you're pursuing the right things, and doing the right things. And I think I had one of 2 paths. I could go down the path of just the pity party, why me, why us, turn into a kid that wasn't doing the right things, or I could try to bring happiness to my parents and do the right thing and go down the right path and make good decisions in life. And for the most part, I did that, and I found value through sports, whether it was basketball, soccer, football, baseball, whatever I was playing. Uh, that's where I truly that was my playground. That was where I had my most confidence, my most comfort, and the relationships, the friendships that I was building through that.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a horribly tragic thing that happened. I can't even imagine how hard it was for everybody, and especially your mom, and then having kids again after. Just all that's crazy. But like you said, I mean, now looking back, you can see the perspective of the pros that come from that, right? Like the bond you have with your family, and kind of it's interesting how you kind of use the football. Probably, I'm assuming, like as an escape in all sports. Of like you're saying, like being on the field is like you can be present there and not worry about any of that stuff. Do you think that like indirectly drove you to just spend more time on sports than probably most kids?
I mean, I think it was definitely our way of life growing up. We come from a generation where electronics were just beginning. I mean, I had Atari, right? I had two games at home and Pong and probably something else, Space Invaders or something along those lines, and I had 2 channels. We didn't have cable out in the country. We didn't have direct TV back then, satellite, right? So we had 2 channels on TV. I had an Atari game set, and our wants were to be outside. I mean, we organized games in the streets, in the park, at the schools, whatever season it was with the main sports, we were playing those sports. And it's just what I knew as a kid, and it probably served as a major distraction for me in the sense of not dwelling on what I didn't have, but really focus on what I could have. And some great friendships that have been lifelong friendships came out of those early years of playing sports at 8, 9, 10 years old. I developed friendships with people that I'm still friends with today. And it wasn't because we were in the same school, but we just had a interest in the same sports, and we were all competitive, and we were all about the same talent, skill level, and we just pushed each other, by competing against each other and competing with each other. And it was a great way of life. It's like I have 4 kids now that are all teenagers, 13, 14, 15, 16, 4 in a row. And our biggest challenge, especially with our boys, is to get them out of the house and to be doing something outside and to, hey, go shoot baskets, go throw the football around, go do something that's enjoying, especially living here in San Diego, where we have year-round weather, where we can always enjoy at least a couple hours outside. And so the electronics have just become such an overwhelming want for our younger people. And for me growing up, I didn't have that as a distraction. The only distraction I had was, or the only hurdle that I had on a daily basis was, how was I going to get to the park to play with my buddies? Because I lived in the country. Was mom going to let me ride the bike? Because I'll ride 5 miles if I have to, and I'll navigate my way to wherever I need to get to, as long as she'll let me do it, and that's how we lived, man. And like, it was just different. It was just different. And we had a want of community in that way. I wanted to be around my friends. I didn't want to be on the farm all the time. I felt like my life was different. I had to feed cows in the morning, and in the evening, I had to change pipes during the summertime to irrigate the fields. I wanted to be in the town, in town with my buddies, playing in the streets, throwing the football around, playing wiffle ball, baseball out of the garage, whatever we could figure out, we would do it. And that's just how I grew up living and wanting to live and competing in every sport and just staying active. I mean, it was a great way to grow up.
Yeah, it's funny. The last guest I had on here, Austin Eckler, he's same story, was undrafted in the NFL and grew up on a farm. So I think it's obviously like growing up on a farm gives you that work ethic at a young age for sure, and that definitely helps. But I think it also like puts in perspective that the work that you put in the sports doesn't feel like work anymore, because the farm is work Playing, like working hard in the gym or working out or on the field, like that doesn't probably feel like work to you, I'm assuming, right?
Right, and absolutely. I mean, hey, I looked at playing basketball as just a great way to sweat and get cardio in, but it wasn't work to me. It was so much fun just playing basketball. And same with football, going to my dad's practices, throwing the football around, starting to play Pop Warner football at the age of 9. Back then, flag football wasn't really as popular as it is today. There weren't those outlets for me. So tackle football was my option, getting to be able to go out there and do that. And little league baseball. I grew up playing little league baseball throughout my early years, my elementary years. And yeah, I mean, I looked forward to getting off the farm so I could play, so I can actually play and have social activity with people my age.
With
And
humans instead
back
of
then,
cows.
I mean, we did a great job of organizing it. When we set a plan, a time and a location, we all showed up. There was no cell phone to reminder or anything. There was a house phone. If you were home, you got lucky to answer it, but we planned ahead of time and we made a date and time and we showed up. We got there.
So when did all the fun and games of like you just being a kid playing sports, when did that start to transition and then be like, wait, maybe I'm better than a lot of these other kids. Like maybe I can take this further. Like I'm sure with your dad coaching junior college, like that was probably always an option in your head. But when did it start getting serious? And when did you start to realize like, man, I'm a lot better than everybody else?
Well, I started to feel some of that in high school, but I was still developing, kind of went through an awkward phase where, I was a skinny, lengthy kid. I wasn't real tall, but I was around 6 feet, but like 135 pounds, like my sophomore year of high school. I didn't have much weight to me. And so being able to get some weight on me. Obviously, the mental aspect of the game, I was well ahead of a lot of my teammates and a lot of the kids at my age that were playing the game because I grew up watching film with my dad. I grew up around my dad coaching and talking about the game, talking about coverage, talking about pressure, talking about decision making, all those things. I had gone to some football camps and a basketball camp while I was in high school. And even against other kids, I excelled. And it wasn't because I was more talented. I just mentally was ahead. I was sharper, so to speak, as far as my decision making was concerned. I just had more maturity there. Um, it wasn't really until probably post senior year of high school. I mean, I had some recruits coming after me in high school, but my senior year of football, I fractured my left elbow in a game. And it was mid-season. I ended up missing half of the season. So whatever sort of interest I had from colleges, lukewarm interest, uh, really disappeared on me at that point. I didn't have much of a senior year. We weren't a huge throwing team. We probably threw the ball 15 times a game. But just because I lacked any sort of statistics that senior year, everybody pretty much fell off. The saving grace was that I had a dad who was the head football coach at the junior college. And so we set out a plan. We set out a plan that I would really take a year off between my high school year and the junior college year. I'd go to school part time, so my clock would not start at the collegiate level, but I would practice with the team. So it was almost like having a red shirt year. And at the time, it was very rare, but they called it a gray shirt. I would go to school part time. I would practice with the team. I'd run the scout team. My dad had a returning quarterback from the previous year. So he didn't really want to have a quarterback competition either between his son and this returning quarterback. But he also had a different skill set than I did. He was more of a runner. I was more of a drop back passer, pocket quarterback at the time. And so he ran a certain style of offense that suited his quarterback strength. So we went through that year. It allowed me to just work out, adapt to the collegiate level, come back, be the starter. And my dad would instill an offense that was more prototypical, more of a spread offense, more built to my strengths of passing and also being able to move a little bit. And so we were able to do that. And after that first year of playing for my dad and being at junior college, believe I was an honorable mention All American. I think I was second team All State in the state of California, and I was all league. I got some interest. My dad let schools know, hey, usually JUCO kids play 2 seasons, 2 years at a JUCO, but I was a predictor, meaning I had the grades and I had the SAT scores and I had all those things that would allow me to transfer after just 2 semesters at a junior college. So we let schools know, and there was interest, but that's really where I started to blossom. Running a system that suited me, that really worked my strengths on the field, playing for my dad, being able to adapt, having a year of growth in between the actual year of playing, which helped me get physically stronger, quicker, faster, all the things that allowed me to be more competitive. And then that's when it just really started to blossom. And by the end of the year, we were killing teams, and I was throwing in the championship, actually, the bowl game that we played in. I threw for 3 touchdowns. I ran for 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's kind of the type of offense that we had grown into. And I was just killing it in all areas. And that's when San Jose State, as well as University of Utah and University of Wyoming, offered me scholarships. And being 30 miles from San Jose, I just felt like the best place for me to allow my family to continue to watch me play and to go to a competitive school. They were competitive in their own conference at the time. It just seemed to be the ideal fit for me.
Looking back, do you think that year of playing with your dad as a coach was your most fun year of football?
It really was. I mean, to be honest with you, my dad, I mean, he literally is the greatest coach that I ever played for. And I don't just say that because he's my dad. Not only does he have the knowledge of the game and the work ethic, but he just has the passion that translates from him, that inner fire that burns inside of you, especially with the game of football, the emotion that you play with. I mean, he exudes that, and the love and the bond that he creates with his players. Today, he has 50 plus years past coaching, and these players from the early 1970s continue to reach out to my dad, and they look at him like a father figure, and it was a very unique situation. I was very blessed to be able to play that season for my dad. And the next year he ended up having heart trouble. He had a 5-way bypass in the third week of their season because he continued to coach at Gavilan. He was still the head coach when I went on to San Jose State, and I was redshirting. My dad had some heart trouble, went in for a 5-way bypass back in 1990 when they were just starting to do bypass surgery. He had 5 clogged arteries. They slit him open. I mean, I nearly lost my dad then, and he came through it, and he took a leave of absence after that year. And he decided, I'm going to take a break from coaching because of the stress and the time and the pressure that he puts on himself to be successful. But he also had a son who was about to start playing college football. And that next year, 1991, was his sabbatical year. He was going to take a year or two off, and he never went back to coaching because I never stopped playing. It wasn't just a 2 or 3 year deal for me. It ended up being 20-year deal for me, and, he was able to live vicariously through me, he and my mom. My dad went to every single college football game, whether I was starting or not. He was there at every single game. And we have that experience to live with us now forever. I mean, it was truly a blessing. And as much as I went through different circumstances there at San Jose State, I had 3 head coaches in 3 years. I had 3 different offenses every single year, three different coordinators. The system changed drastically. I had to adapt and learn every single season, which really hurt us as a program, especially going into my senior year. But what I did get out of it, obviously, I got the chance to go on to the Canadian Football League, which then led to the National Football League, but I also got the chance to share in all those memories with my family, my parents, my aunts, uncles, my grandfather, who was still around, at the time. And just everybody got to experience every single weekend was like a family reunion at Spartan Stadium or at Gavilan Junior College or at Gilroy High School. I had so much great support from my family and love for my family, which really helped my mom through a lot of the struggles that she had been going through in my early years.
I mean, yeah, you played a lot of football in that NorCal area.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Sure. But 5 years with the Niners, 3 plus a red shirt at San Jose State. I mean, my whole childhood. I'm surprised I'm not living in the Bay Area and, really taking advantage of the networking opportunities that I have up there. But we settled in San Diego in 2009, and it's a great place to raise our children. But there's a lot of the things about the Bay that I miss. I mean, I'm sporting the SJ hat, recognizing San Jose State and my alma mater. But, there's a lot of great things in the Bay that are still there for me. But I'm raising kids right now, and that's the priority.
makes sense. So when you're going through the end of your time at San Jose State, like, what is your mindset? Did you have the mindset of going to the Canadian Football League? Did you have the expectations of the NFL, or was the NFL just like a long shot dream? Like, what was your mindset like?
I've always been one to live in the moment, right? And like my kids, because we have raised them in an area where there's a lot of retired athletes, they see professional athletes like it's just a normal thing for them. Whereas me growing up in Gilroy, I never saw a professional athlete unless I was watching TV. And so I would hear my kids talk about playing professional sports and being a professional athlete. And what team do you think I'm going to play for, Dad? I'm like, just be your best right now. Be your best right now. That's a dream. I appreciate dreams and I appreciate goals, but it's the less than 1% that get there. I understand and I know I've been there, done that. But for me, I always was about living in the moment. I was always about being the best that I could be in that given day. And I felt like if I could achieve that, then that would open up the next window of opportunity. It'd be up to me to then make or take advantage of that opportunity. And when I was at San Jose State, my first opportunity came after my redshirt year. I was a redshirt sophomore, and a senior was coming back who had started as a junior, but he had a redshirt year in between his junior and senior year due to a knee injury. So he was coming back. We had lost 2 senior quarterbacks. So now I was in a competition with the senior who had started 2 seasons prior for San Jose State. He fit the prototype. He was 6'4", 225. He ran a 4.6 40. The guy was extremely athletic, strong arm, all the things. But there was something that I had an edge on him with, just the mentality to grasp the game, to execute the game, the leadership skills, the grit that I played the game with, the toughness, mental and physical toughness that I had. And so I came out of spring ball really believing that I outperformed the other quarterback. And the coach at the time, who was in his second year with the team, he was there for my redshirt year, and then this was his second year. He just felt like the senior, because he was a senior and he had been a starter, that the opportunity, the job was going to go to him. Well, midway through the season, I replaced him. It happened early in a game against the University of Hawaii. He got injured on the first drive of the game. I stepped on the field and I didn't look back. I threw for over 400 in that game, a couple touchdown passes. It ended up going down to the wire, ended up being, I think, a 35-35 tie back when tiebreakers weren't held. The next week was my first start at home against Nevada, Las Vegas. And in that game, I threw 5 touchdown passes and set a Spartan record at the time for touchdown passes in a game, I believe. That being said, I ended up being a sophomore honorable mention or sophomore All-American in the NCAA, and then became the full-time starter my junior and senior year. Both years, I was MVP of the team. Both years I was all conference. And I just felt like, even though I had gone through now 3 different head coaches, because I had a new one my junior year and then another new one my senior year, I was still performing at a high level. I was still showing that I could execute no matter what offense I was put in. I was executing it at a high standard. And I believed that the NFL was my next stop. I played in the East-West Shrine game, which at the time in 1994 was a major all-star game. It was amongst the biggest, along with the Senior Bowl. I think the at the East-West Shrine was the next biggest all-star game back then. And we played against all the same talent that goes to the Senior Bowl, and I was the MVP. I threw 3 touchdown passes. I ran for a 2-point conversion. I led the West to a big victory, and I thought for sure I'm going to get an NFL opportunity. I don't know if I'll be drafted, but somebody's got to bring me into camp. And so I sat there through 2 or 3 days of the draft process, 7 rounds. At the time, it had gone down from 14 to then 7. And, I never got a call. And I did get a call not long after from Steve Mariucci, who was coaching quarterbacks with the Green Bay Packers. And I had reached out, prior to that, I had reached out to Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh was coaching at Stanford. Bill Walsh had coached against me while I played at San Jose State. And when I played Bill at Stanford, it was a shootout. And after the game, Bill made some comments about me to the media saying that Garcia kid did some Joe Montana-like things today. And so when he said that in the media, the local media, I always took that as just feeling very honored that Bill would think of me in that sort of way. And so when I saw Coach Walsh at the East-West Shrine practices, which were held at Stanford University, my dad was at the practice and he goes, "Hey, Jeff, there's Coach Walsh. Go tell him thank you for what he said about you in the paper, in the media." So I walked up to Coach Walsh and I was like, "Hey, Coach, I'm Jeff Garcia." He's like, "I know who you are." And I go, "I just want to thank you for the words that you said, expressed about me, the kind words. I really appreciate it. Joe Montana was my idol. You're my idol as a coach, watching my favorite team, coaching my favorite team, growing up in the Bay Area." And he's like, "Well, you know what, Jeff? You deserve it. And this weekend, you're going to be the MVP." And so it turned out I was the MVP that weekend. I had said, "Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate that." I end up being MVP. Well, I went back to Coach Walsh at Stanford. I met with him and I just asked him, "Hey, I didn't get drafted, but I know you have a lineage of coaches that are coaching in the NFL that coached under you with the 49ers. If you could just reach out to any of those coaches and express your thoughts about me. I mean, you've coached Joe Montana, you've coached Steve Young. I mean, you've 2 Hall of Famers, 4 Super Bowls. I mean, you know what you're talking about. Maybe somebody will listen to you, Well, I did get a call from Mariucci, who was coaching under Mike Holmgren at Green Bay at the time, who had coached under Bill Walsh, right? So Mooch was like, "Hey, Jeff, Holmgren told me to reach out to you. He got a message from Bill Walsh to talk to you. And I'm just going to say this. We are pretty stacked at quarterback right now. We'll probably bring in a camp guy. If you have the chance to go to Canada and play, go get some years of experience up there. We're not really going to look to bring you in here. And if you're not getting any calls from anybody else, the experience could do you a world of good. Just go see what happens." And I was like, "All right, Coach." Well, they had Mark Brunell at the time, Brett Favre, who was in his, I think, 2nd year, and then Ty Detmer. Those were their 3 quarterbacks. And then they brought in a guy by the name of Kurt Warner to be their camp quarterback, who they cut, right? Which is what the movie shows when he was in camp with the Green Bay Packers. So that was the group of quarterbacks that they had. And so I was the odd man out, so to speak, I guess. And yeah, my only opportunity was to go to Canada. I didn't have any other opportunities. I really didn't know a whole lot about the Canadian Football League, but I knew about it. I knew some players that were up there. I had followed some players that were up there. And I knew that it was the next opportunity for me to continue to live like a kid, to do what I love to do, to play a game. I don't know what contracts they offer, what they pay. I don't know any of that. But I know it might give me a chance to still play football. And that's what I was interested in.
Interesting. So what was like, I mean, that whole process, like, I mean, playing football, like that's something you're familiar with, but like, I mean, you've spent your whole life, it sounds like, in that Bay Area, and then you moved to Canada. Like, I mean, what is the culture shock of that?
Initially it was amazing. I go to Canada in the month of June, so it's in the middle of summer. It doesn't get dark until about 11:30 at night. So you have long days and the weather was beautiful. The city's beautiful. You have the Canadian Rocky Mountains on one side of the city, a beautiful downtown, the Bow River flowing right through the middle of it, and a very talented football team. This was a team that year in and year out was competing for the Grey Cup title, for the West Division championship. They had Doug Flutie as their quarterback. They had some great receivers, great players. A lot of these guys I really didn't know about. I obviously knew of Doug. I'd watched Doug play at Boston College and throw the Hail Mary and win the Heisman Trophy and all those things. But I didn't really know much about the rest of the team. I didn't really know the rules of the game. 12 on 12, a wider field, a longer field, 3 downs to get a first down. Different little rules, tweaks here and there that it's still football. At the end of the day, it's still football, but you have a little bit different approach when you play the game. And so learning the game, learning the rules of the game, the width, the size of the field, all those things. I mean, the first year was really about making the team. They had Doug Flutie as their starter and a guy by the name of Steve Taylor, who had played at Nebraska, had a great collegiate career, had been in the CFL for 6 years. So he was a veteran in the CFL. So he was the backup. And I was competing with another college rookie like myself for the third string position on the team. I mean, not even to be the backup. I was competing to be the number 3 quarterback on the team. And so it really came down to a preseason game where I had 1 quarter to show my ability in a live situation. And I was blessed and fortunate that in that 1 quarter, I took advantage of it. I threw 2 touchdown passes. I was like 6 for 8 passing. I moved the team up and down the field. We won the game. And at the end of the game, the offensive coordinator really argued with the head American scout as to wanting to keep me instead of the other quarterback. And I mean, I talk about opportunities, how they're few and far between, and you better be ready to strike when they present themselves. I literally was on the cusp of not playing football anywhere and maybe going back home and figuring out what's next in my life, and that's where it's such a fine line between making it or breaking it. And I was fortunate that in that moment, I stood up and I made it. And so that year I went through the whole season, never seeing the field, being the number 3 guy. Half the time I didn't even suit up for the game. I was just there to learn and grow. It was in my second season when the opportunity presented itself again. I became the backup to Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie got injured in the 8th or 9th game of the season, and now I step onto the field. And, I always had that somewhat of that chip on my shoulder, to prove to people that I belonged, that I could do it at a high level. And I took the fact that people didn't know who I was, probably doubted where I came from or what sort of ability I had, but I was going to prove to the home crowd that I was very capable and I could take it to another level. And that's really what happened. And in that first year of getting a chance to start, I went 8-1 as a starter. I was a North Division All-Star. I helped lead the team to the Grey Cup. Now Doug came back for the playoffs. They reinserted Doug as the starting quarterback, which I understand, but it was a difficult pill to swallow because I had a lot of success on the field with that team that year. And there were a lot of teammates that thought that I should be on the field battling with them in the Grey Cup, and I didn't get a chance to. But that being said, it really was a great experience for me to learn from Doug as well, see how he approached the game, how he played the game, and then put my spin on it and have my own success on the field.
Yeah, I mean, that's so crazy. There's like small opportunities, like one quarter of a preseason game in Canada can launch your career one way or another. I know it seems like you obviously do a great job of capitalizing on those opportunities because you're very present in the moment and you're thinking like, it seems like you're not thinking of like the magnitude of the moment though. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like you're like stressed or nervous. Like my whole football career depends on this. It's more of like, as soon as you get on the field, it's like, all right, I'm gonna show you guys why I should stay on the field. Is that kind of the mindset you've always had?
I mean, really, it is. It's like the excitement of being able to go out there and showcase your ability and live in the moment, and be present in that moment, not worry about any sort of circumstances surrounding that. There's only so much that I can control. Control what I can control, and everything else could take care of itself. And that's really how I've approached life in so many ways. And that's really what I try to teach and preach to my own children is that you're in control of you. You could push yourself as hard as you want to. You could not push yourself. And that's where you're going to end up. You're going to end up not being what you want to be. If you have expectations for yourself, like I did, I had expectations for myself to not let anyone down, to succeed, to find a way to make everyone around me better, to make myself better. Hey, focus on me, do the best that I can. That's going to lift everyone else around me. And just having that mentality throughout my life and that mental and physical toughness that I preach to young people all the time. You have to have that thick skin. You have to have that ability to block out the noise, so to speak. Hey, if you're able to utilize that as motivation for yourself, then more power to you. Don't allow it to break you down, though, because you are in control of yourself. You're in control of the situation. It's up to you to go out there and prove what you're capable of.
So what was it like when you finally did get was the full-time starter up in Canada? That's for the Calgary Stampeders, right?
Yes, the Calgary Stampeders. I mean, it was awesome. We had a great locker room environment, much like a college atmosphere. Nobody up there was making millions of dollars. Nobody was up there making $1 million except Doug Flutie. And that was 1 million Canadian, which translated in about 700 American, right? So, you know what? Nobody was making the big bucks. So it was different. It was an environment where nobody was above anybody else. We all were equals. We had one mindset that was to win a championship. We all loved playing the game of football. That's why we were there. We weren't there because we were getting financially rich. We weren't getting ahead in life in that sort of way, but we were getting an unbelievable experience. And the relationships that I made up there, we just went back in 2023, the summer of 2023, to celebrate the 25-year anniversary of winning the 1998 Grey Cup. And probably 35 of my ex-teammates were there. And, smaller rosters up there too. We dressed 37 a
Wow.
game, not 47 or 50 like the NFL does. And we probably only have 50 total with practice roster and that sort of on the team at a time. So getting 35 players back to come celebrate the Grey Cup was a great situation and opportunity for me to reconnect with some great people in my life, some great experiences, and just leading that team to a championship. I mean, we were so close every year that I played in Calgary, the 5 years that I was there. Every year we were on the cusp, man. And we got to the Grey Cup 2 times, but you almost walk away from that 5 years thinking, gosh, we had some other opportunities. But I'm thankful that what would be my final year, not known to me, because I was in the mindset that, hey, the NFL may never happen for me. This may be my professional experience playing in the Canadian Football League. It may be a 10, 15-year journey for me right here in Canada. And that's where my mind was. And then all of a sudden we win the Grey Cup. I had opened a Mexican food restaurant, Garcia's Restaurante. I mean, we were serving tacos and then all of a sudden I got that interest from the NFL. But that experience in Canada really allowed me to blossom as a quarterback, to grow as a QB, mature, really develop in so many ways, not just as a passer, but also as a runner, as someone who can create outside the pocket or who can throw on the run with pinpoint accuracy, which I really took pride in. So it really helped me develop my game in so many ways that when the NFL opportunity did present itself, I was probably more prepared than ever than when I was 23 or 24. And I think in so many ways, it's sad to see a good player at 22, 23 years old get cut from the NFL and never have an opportunity maybe in another league to continue to grow because we're barely scratching the surface at 22, 23. It's not till we're 28, 29, 30 where we truly are hitting our stride as men, mentally and physically, how our body works, how to train our body, to sleep, to eat, all the things that we need to do in order to be our best. We don't know that at 22.
Yeah.
Guys are more aware of it today than ever. I sure as hell didn't know that at 22. I was eating whatever I could get in my mouth just because I didn't have the funds or the support to have a dietitian. At San Jose State didn't provide those opportunities. So, hey, if it was pizza, if it was a burger, whatever it was, I had to get into my system. I got it into my system. But that being said, as we age, as we grow into young men and men adults, we really fine tune ourselves and we become better athletes 6, 7 years later at 28, 29, 30 because of how we condition our minds, how we condition our bodies. And it's sad to see somebody not get that chance because it was cut 4 or 5 years too soon, you know?
Yeah, especially the quarterback position where it is a lot of it between the years. Yeah, I guess it's not talked about enough that like a male's brain isn't like fully developed to the like 27 or something like that. And we have NFL franchises giving up on their quarterbacks before their brain is
Right.
fully developed. Like it's pretty crazy to think about it when you put it that
And
way.
if you want to talk about that, look, the last thing that I would do is draft a quarterback in the first round. And I know that I would miss on some possibilities, but more often than not, it is a miss. And, this year may be a unique year. You have a few quarterbacks that are playing decently as rookies, but more often than not, probably above the 50 percentile, a first round quarterback fails or
Mhm.
struggles in those first 2 or 3 years. And oftentimes it's because they're thrown to the wolves. They go to one of the worst football teams in the NFL that needs answers in other areas. They don't have a good offensive line. They don't have a good defense. They don't have a running game, which all helps a quarterback. And all of a sudden, you have a guy like the young man in Jacksonville who's struggling. I mean, he took a headshot last weekend, but he hasn't been playing well in the last couple years. And I feel like he's digressed as a player in the National Football League. And part of that is not having the supporting cast around it. Part of that is probably the lack of consistency in coaching. Yes, he's had a quarterback, an ex-quarterback as an NFL head coach the last few seasons, but you just see a lot of struggles with some of these young guys and it ruins them. A great story right now is to see what the quarterback from Seattle is doing when he was pretty much written off by the NFL and he's had a resurgence closer to the time frame in his life where he's more mature to handle what's being thrown at him and how to handle that. Same thing with Jameis Winston out there in Cleveland. Another guy who's gone through struggles early in his career, was thrown to the wolves. And now through maturity, through age, he's become, although he threw some picks the other night, I
It's a
guess he
fun game
set
though.
a record for total yardage of both teams together in passing yardage. But, he's done some good things out there too. And you see his approach, how he values the opportunity. And that's, says a lot for his maturity.
Yeah, I just think the NFL is just too impatient in all regards. So it's like the head coaches only have a couple years, so they get desperate. And I mean, as a Falcons fan, I'm excited the way that we're handling the quarterback situation. Where we drafted one high, but he's just
Yeah,
hopefully not playing
Cousins
soon.
gets to teach him and mentor him, and the kid can learn from Cousins. That's the best situation. You get a veteran guy who can handle being the starter, who's your guy, and you get a young guy who's going to have at least 2 years, maybe three to learn and grow. And you start to give him reps though, right? You start to find games or times during game where he could get a series to go out there. Now, it's tough because you don't want to ruin a game and you can't afford to do that because every game is so important. Every game is so close. But you get to a point where a guy like that, who is your first rounder, you start to trust in him that he can handle a series. He can handle a few snaps in live competition.
So what was it like for you? I mean, was the 49ers the only opportunity you had out of the Canadian Football League? And what was kind of the reaction of like, holy hell, I'm going back to my hometown team and I'm going to back up Steve Young?
Yeah, I worked out for 5 teams. So I had the Raiders, the St. Louis Rams at the time, Jacksonville Jaguars, Miami Dolphins, and then the 49ers. And I worked out for the Niners were my last workout. I had a contract offer from the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins at the time had Dan Marino. He was going into what would be his final year, actually. And Dave Wanstead was their coach. So Dave was used to the Dallas Cowboys, Troy Aikman. Now he has Dan Marino, that prototypical 6'4", 225, 230 pocket passer, right? And for me, when I did work out with the 49ers, a lot of that came from Bill Walsh going back to the 49ers to work for them in the front office. And he was the one who was really uh, in my corner, who really opened up that door down there with San Francisco to at least give me a workout. So I went down to San Francisco. I worked out for them and the workout went great. Like I said, I had already worked out for 4 other NFL teams, so I knew what to expect. When I worked out for the Raiders, I was just coming off of a Grey Cup win. I was coming off of Thanksgiving, Christmas break, New Year's. I hadn't been throwing or working out like I was capable of, and so they were my first workout on a cold, wet, murky day in Oakland in front of John Gruden. And not that it was a bad workout, but it wasn't a great workout. And to me, I've always looked at workouts like, you want to see me work out? Put on the film and watch me play in a game. Like, what are you going to get out of just seeing me throw the ball in person? I'm 6'1", 185 pounds. I'm not going to impress you walking off the bus. I don't have the rocket arm. I'm accurate. I can anticipate. I make good decisions. That is all seen on film. It's not going to see just throwing to the equipment guy running an out route, right? So that being said, I was prepared. I was ready for the 49 workout. It went great. Right then and there, they said, hey, we're interested in signing you. They didn't really have a set backup to Steve Young at the time. They had Jim Druckenmiller, who they had drafted in the first round of Virginia Tech, but he was not a Steve Young guy. I was more a Steve Young guy than a Dan Marino guy. And so that's why the decision, not only because it was my hometown team, but their style of offense fit me more, was more suited to me than what Miami was doing. And so going back to my hometown team, to my hometown, I mean, it was really a dream come true. Being able to back up Steve Young, who I'd watched follow Joe Montana. I saw a guy who had a similar skill set to me. He was accurate. He was sharp. He could extend plays when they broke down around him. I could learn a lot from him, just like sitting up in the NFL watching Doug Flutie. I get a chance to now watch a future Hall of Famer in Steve Young and learn from one of the best to ever play the games. That changed quickly when he went down in the third game of the season on a Monday night. And all of a sudden it became my job and my opportunity.
Yeah, it seems like history's repeating itself for you. It seems like kind of the same story over and over again. So, was there ever like a pinch me moment where you're like playing for the 49ers and you're in the NFL? Because I feel like in your journey, it sounded like at some point where you're like, the NFL might not be the thing anymore. And then, I mean, I don't know if you even had the mindset or the thought of like when you're starting, like I could be doing this another 10 years or 11 years. What was
Right.
it? What was that like kind of excitement?
One of the moments, pinch me moments, was the first game that I was about to start, and it was against the Tennessee Titans at home. And this is 1999. So it's the year that Tennessee goes to the Super Bowl that year and loses to the Rams. But they had a good football team. And so I'm coming into my first start. It's in front of the home crowd. I'm driving up to the old ballpark, Candlestick, and you could see it off in a distance. And, just the feel on my body's going through those tingles, that excitement, that I'm almost to an emotional, like bringing tears to my eyes in the sense of the emotion that I'm feeling, that I'm going to be the guy running out onto the field that day. The team I grew up watching, idolizing Joe Montana, watching Super Bowls. Now all of a sudden I'm that guy in front of like my parents, my family, everybody, the hometown crowd. I mean, it was just unbelievable to feel that and to be able to experience and live that. And actually was a great day. My first start was a win. Threw for 2 touchdowns. I ran for a touchdown. I didn't throw a pick. We won the game. And I'm thinking, man, I could do this. I could do this at a high level. I'm proving it today that I'm capable. Now, I went through some struggles that first year after that. And I had to go through the roller coaster ride of emotions and hear the negativity and deal with all of that. But I came out, you know, on the positive side and learned from it. I grew from it. The second year in San Fran, I set a record for passing yards in a season, had a Pro Bowl year. We were still struggling to win football games, but offensively, we were very productive. And
So that
and
second
obviously
year,
it's hard. What's
so
that?
that second year, Steve Young had retired, right?
Yes,
Going into
he
that second,
retired.
and
Yeah.
then the 49ers drafted 2 quarterbacks in that draft.
Yes.
What was your
Yes.
reaction to that? Was that kinda like a slap in the face, or did that just kinda push you more?
No, I think I always took things as like just motivation, fuel to my fire. And I also understood I'm 30 years old. I'm not just a young rookie, 23, 24, 25-year-old. I'm a 30-year-old. I was a 29-year-old rookie basically in the NFL. So I'm now going into my second year and I'm 30 years old and we need to find a backup. The previous year, my backups were Steve Stenstrom and from Stanford and Matt Barnes from Cal Berkeley, right? And of course, the San Jose State quarterback in the Bay Area colleges is the starter over the Stanford and Cal guy, right? I had that bragging rights. I had those bragging rights. But that being said, they drafted a kid that I know they had regrets with Giovanni Carmazzi. I believe second round, second early, third round. He didn't turn out. They drafted another kid, Tim Rattay, in the 7th round. And my attitude was like, look, I'm going to make these young guys better because I'm going to compete. I'm going to push them. I'm going to help them. Like, we're only as strong as the last guy in our locker room. And if I go down, somebody else has to step in and take over. And so, I always took it as I'm going to help these guys. We did sign Rick Meyer either that year or the next year. We signed Rick Meyer, who was a veteran quarterback out of Notre Dame, a former first rounder himself. So we did have another bet on the squad at some point. But, I always looked at it like only, again, control what you can control. I'm in control of keeping the job. If I do what I'm supposed to do and what I expect out of myself, nobody else is going to be able to take it from me. If I'm not doing what I need to do and I'm not handling the job correctly and winning games or being productive on the field, then they're going to find another answer. So I better step up and do what I need to do. And that's on me. And so that's been my attitude forever. And it was the same when I was in Tampa Bay in 2008 and John Gruden was looking at Brett Favre with these big googly eyes like, oh, I might be able to have Brett Favre here. who was also late and his at 39, 40 years old, right? And I'm like, do whatever you need to do, John. I'm going to compete my ass off. You know, he's going to have to come in here and take it from me. I'm not afraid of it, you know? And that's just been my attitude for my entire life. I know he's a Hall of Famer. I know he's done great things on the football field, but I'm a hell of a player too.
I mean, yeah, it seems like your mentality definitely worked out. I mean, you made the Pro Bowl for what, 3 straight years, those first years starting in San Francisco. What is kind of your fondest memories of those playoff runs or those seasons?
Yeah, you know, we went through a couple hard years, my first 2 years, but we were in a turnover phase in San Fran. We had gotten old, had to get some youth in, had to, you know, change up some of the bodies that were in that locker room on that field. And we started to do it. And my third year in, we went 12-4. We had a hell of a football team, but the Rams were rolling at the time. And us being in the same division as the Rams, we ended up being the second team. So we had to go on the road and play a wild card game in Green Bay, the frozen tundra in January, right? And we competed our tails off. We had a chance to win that football game. We ended up coming up short. But the next year, we end up winning the NFC West division. We get the home berth for a wild card game. And one of my greatest probably moments in my NFL career is the 24-point comeback win versus the Giants and being able to rally the troops and come back and win that football game right there in Candlestick. And, you know, that moment not only maybe signified my career of overcoming odds in so many ways, but it goes down as a memorable experience for so many 49er fans who witnessed that day. And, you know, for me to be a part of that was just awesome. You know, out of those great teams and a couple great years, I fortunately surrounded by the talent that I had and utilizing Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens and Garrison Hurst and all the guys, you know, provided me an opportunity to go to 3 Pro Bowls there with the 49ers. And so to prove myself on that level, knowing that it was the players and the coaches around the league who voted me into the Pro Bowl because of their respect for me of what I have done on the football field. I mean, that said a lot to me.
So I have 2 questions from that. One, I know, like, especially in the media, especially at that time, like, I mean, T.O. is an incredible football player, but I know there's some highs and lows, and he can just a one of a kind personality. One, I was just kind of wondering, like, what it was like being his teammates, like, on a day-to-day basis, but then on a completely different, how come after you guys won that crazy playoff game against the Giants, you win that game, you lose the next game in the playoffs, and didn't you guys fire your head coach after that? What?
Yeah.
Why?
So to answer the first one with Tio, I mean, the guy, phenomenal athlete on the field, difference maker, beast of a guy when he had the ball in his hands. He could just run through tackles, straight arm people, could do all the things. Great player, obviously, Hall of Famer. At times, a little bit of a struggle, personality wise. I mean, and not to the point of being a distraction. You understand where he's coming from. He wants opportunities to make plays on the field. Me as the quarterback, it's my job to give him those opportunities. Not always easy when teams are focused on stopping the big target, you know, and me not wanting to force the issue. That being said, it created a little bit of hostility at times. And we unfortunately had to deal with that. And I had to deal with that as the quarterback. But I try to do my best in not allowing that situation to disrupt our locker room, to disrupt our team. And like I said, it comes from a place of just wanting to be more productive, to wanting to be able to help the team in more ways than just the opportunities that he was given. And now, if you look at his career, I think his most productive years, or some of his most productive years outside of the 1 year with McNabb when they went to the Super Bowl, his most productive years were with me as his quarterback. And, you know, at some point there was talk of the top quarterback receiver duos in the league, Peyton Manning and maybe Marvin Harrison, and then myself and T.O. And so it wasn't like we were not productive. We were very productive, but you just had to deal with a certain energy and a certain personality that only wanted the best for the team. Now, we go to the playoffs, we win our division, we beat the Giants, we lose to Tampa. The team fires Mariucci. That was the downfall of the 49ers for the next 9, 10 years before Harbaugh came in to resurrect them. Why they fired Steve, I think there was a conflict of egos from the GM, who at the time had come from being a head college football coach at UCLA to now a general manager in the National Football League. So I think there was a little bit of budding there. I thought Steve had done a great job of turning over an old team into a young team and a competitive team. Here we had gone to the playoffs 2 years in a row. We were really young on defense, but getting better every single year. We were talented on offense. We had 2 solid running backs. We had a receiver, a big-time receiver. We had a Pro Bowl quarterback. We had a hell of an offensive line. And now all of a sudden, we're going through a coaching change. And they brought in Coach Erickson, who had to assume half of a coaching staff that was not his, that were held over from the previous year. He had to assume an offensive philosophy that was not his. It was what we were already doing. And that year, when you look at every game and break it down, we were 7-9. Could have been, we were 7-9. Easily could have been a 10-6 or 11-5 team. We missed an extra point here. We missed a field goal there. We went through 4 place kickers that year. And I'm not saying we blame the game on special teams, but as we see the NFL, it's a difference of 3 points or less oftentimes. And when you're missing key extra point or a key field goal at certain times of games or to win games, it's costly. And that's how close we were to being a playoff team again. Granted, if we don't go through the coaching change, I guarantee that we're a playoff team. We don't have the same struggles. And then the next year, the owners just started to unload contracts. Hey, Jeff, you make too much, you're gone. T.O., you make too much, you're gone. Garrison Hurst, some of the O-linemen, you're gone. And so you start to break apart the team in a situation where the consistency is now starting to change and not be there. And now you're left with the struggles of the next 8 to 10 years and drafting a quarterback, Alex Smith, with the first pick and putting him in a position where he had no help around him and a new coaching staff just about every year and a new coordinator just about every year was not going to be a good thing.
Yeah, it's crazy how that unfolded so fast. So for you, what was your mindset like of kind of that dream of being the 49ers quarterback kind of coming to an end? Like, what was your thought process? Were you just kind of still in the moment, like, hey, I'm still playing football, on to the next team, let's keep it going? Or was it kind of like a shot in the chest?
No, I think, it's unfortunate, but after that 5th year, there were a couple things obviously happened. Prior to that, the firing of Coach Mariucci, personal problems that I had to deal with. And I almost looked at maybe it was time for a change. Now, I can look back and wish that there was never any change. I wish that Mariucci wasn't fired. I wish that we kept the whole band together and we had a 10 to 15-year career. That would have been awesome. But with the way that free agency is, with the way that contracts are, and all the things, and with the way that things had gone in those 2002, 2003 seasons with the coaching change and all of that, I just felt like maybe it is time for a fresh start somewhere else. And so I was open to it. I was open to change. I think I learned a lot in the process of then going to a Cleveland and then to a Detroit during years of struggles for those organizations and what that was like. And so, there were a lot of lessons learned over those next few years for myself, but I was fortunate enough to still have interest out there in my abilities to play the game. And, being able to go to Philadelphia, accept the fact that I wasn't going to be a starter, but yet I was going to be with an organization that had a chance to win, which was first and foremost at that point after being in Detroit and Cleveland the previous 2 years where they really struggled to win. Now going to a place where the organization had a winning background, that was the priority for me. I wanted to be in a place that knew how to win. They were going to win because that creates a whole different environment and mindset. Now, it was hard to accept not being on the field and being able to contribute to the team. And so watching the first 10 weeks of the season wasn't an easy thing. As much as I was supportive of Donovan and trying to push Donovan to be the best he could be, challenge him in ways, hey, get him working out or keep him doing the things that have made him successful, and also preparing myself that if anything happened to Donovan, I was ready to take the opportunity and run with it. And that's what came down. That's what it came down to with his injury in the 10th game, me stepping onto the field, me helping turn that season around, leading them to an NFC East title, leading them to a playoff win, almost a second playoff win in New Orleans, and then opening up a door for me to be a starter again, going to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, your story just keeps repeating itself. You just go to an organization, you back up some legend. You're not supposed to play. The legend gets hurt. You go on the field. You beat the Giants in the playoffs, and then you're not there anymore. Um,
And I loved Philadelphia. I loved being in Philly, but they really put me in a position to where either I was going to outprice myself by saying this is how much I want, knowing I'm coming back as a backup, or I was going to give them a tremendous deal and succumb to being a backup again. Whereas Tampa was opening the door to go be a starter and to pay me more similar to a starter in the National Football League, and to take a team that had just won a Super Bowl 4 or 5 years prior, but was missing that quarterback leadership and was coming out of a tough year. I believe they were 4-12 or so the year before I got there. And then I was able to go there and help turn their season around, win the NFC South Division, go to the playoffs. We unfortunately lost to the Giants, who went on to win the Super Bowl that year, but go to a Pro Bowl that year. Again, at 38 years old or 37 years old, playing at a high level.
yeah, that's awesome. You're just overall resilience, and I feel like you're so good at being in the present that you're not like overthinking, like, oh man, this might be my last time to play football. Like it's just more like, hey, I'm still playing football. Let's just take it one day at a time. When did it
Yeah.
finally hit you like that father time was catching up to you and it was time to be like, okay, I'm pushing it here?
Yeah, I felt like I could have played into my 40s, honestly. I felt like I took care of my body. I was in great shape. I just got married. I got married late in my life. We just started having children. I signed with the Oakland Raiders. I thought, okay, I started my career in the Bay. I'm going to finish my career in the Bay. And I go to a situation where Jamarcus Russell is going into his third year, obviously number one draft pick by the Raiders in 2007. This is 2009. It's going to be his third season. And I'm thinking, all right, well, I'll go in. They want me to mentor him. Sure, I'll be the veteran guy to help the young guy. I'll push him. But then you go in and you see what the culture is all about. The guy doesn't want to work. He doesn't want to be mentored. He doesn't want to challenge himself. He doesn't want to take on a leadership role. He's not doing the things that you need to do at this level in order to be successful. And for me, watching that and being a part of that was very frustrating. I felt like I still had the ability to be a starting quarterback in the National Football League. I had just come out of being a starter in Tampa Bay. The only reason things changed in Tampa Bay was that I was only under a 2-year contract, so my contract was over, and they had fired John Gruden. Even though we had a winning season, they had fired him. We had a failure in the last 4 games. We were 9-3 in 2008, 9-3 going into our last 4 games. We just had to win one of those, and we would have been in the playoffs. We were undefeated at home, and then we went on a streak of losing our last 4, and it was a complete failure by us as a team and the coaching staff. And so they fired John. They didn't see me as somebody that they would bring back again. Maybe they wanted to go to a younger version. And so I was a free agent. I signed with the Oakland Raiders. And, I'm out there in Oakland. I'm going through the offseason workouts. I'm going through training camp. And I'm like, I should be starting for this football team. But the politics, the general manager, the ownership, they are forcing the issue on this young guy being their starter instead of doing what's best for the team right now. Maybe he needs to watch from the sidelines and learn and grow in that way instead of going out on the field and screwing it all up all the time. And so I just got to a point where I was going to be the backup. I was in a mentorship position, a position to help the young guy. The young guy didn't want to be helped. I had 2 babies at home. We had just moved to San Diego. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to go through this anymore. I'm 39 years old. I'm past the days of scratching and clawing my way to get the respect and the opportunity. I've earned everything that I've ever gotten. I've proven that I have what it takes, but yet you don't want me to do that for you. And so for me, I just was really struggling with being in that locker room. And so I asked to be released, and it really somewhat ended my NFL career. Now, I did get an opportunity to play in the United Football League a year later, and I accepted that just because I love football and I love playing the game of football. In the hindsight, you think, why'd I do that? Why did I go do that? I mean, did I need to? No, I didn't need to, but I love playing football. And so I did it. And then at 41, I was home. We were about to have our 4th kid. And I got called by the Houston Texans to come in as a backup and a veteran in the quarterback room. And so it was a great opportunity for me to, hey, get a handful of games with the Texans and just be a part of their winning season that year. And and then right off into the sunset, basically. But I felt like had I not left the Raiders, I probably would have started because Jamarcus in game 1 on a Monday night against the Chargers rolls his ankle and the backup's in the game, Bruce Krakowski. So I probably would have been on the field right then and I wouldn't have looked back. But it didn't happen that way. And, I made my decision. I have to live with that. It was a tough decision for me to make because, and I broke down in tears. I was talking to Coach Gable when I asked him to release me. It was the hardest thing for me to basically do because I felt like I was letting down the other 49 guys or so on that team. And also taking myself away from something that I loved doing so much and have had such a great time and so many great experiences throughout my life because of the game of football.
I mean, yeah, that's gotta be tough. But you mean your football journey is incredible. I mean, you played till you were 40 at a high level and always clawing and competing to be the starter. So, I mean, your love for football is very clear. What's your kind of plans for the future? Do you have like ambitions to be a coach like your dad, or are you just content being the Uber driver for your kids?
No, I'm not content being the Uber driver unless I develop celebrity Uber, and then we get a bunch of retired celebrities driving Ubers for people. I think
that
that
could
could
work.
be a good thing, actually. People need jobs. But no, I love coaching, and I've coached my kids throughout all levels, throughout all sports. Actually had a conversation with a current head football coach at a local high school today who's a former kicker in the National Football League about the potential of coming out and helping him. I love working with the young people. I think that the high school age kids are the perfect age to still have an impact on, where you can help guide them, direct them, inspire them, motivate them to be something greater. I've worked with quarterbacks individually throughout the years. I've had multiple kids come through my training academy here in San Diego when I was doing coaching of the quarterback position more full time. Worked with a lot of good young kids and even escalated to some collegiate and NFL guys. And one of those guys even being Jamarcus Russell, bringing up his name back in 2000. Shoot, when was that? He was about to make a comeback in 2014, 15, or something like that. And
I
I
remember that.
actually opened myself up to helping him on the field. That being said, I love coaching. It's really where my passion is. It's where my knowledge is and where I can be me. I can demonstrate, I can create a competitive environment. I can instill passion in these kids and fuel their fire as much as it's fueling mine.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and recapping your whole journey in full detail and taking the time to go through it all. Is there anything else you would like to plug or bring up, or where can the people find you on social media?
Yeah, you could find me on at Jeff Garcia QB5 on Instagram and residency hats. This is what I'm wearing right now. And they support a lot of the towns around the NFL and NBA. And, just, hey, continue to ignite your fire. I mean, when I think about life, I'm so blessed to have the life that I have and what I've worked for and where I'm at in my life. And I'm trying to find new ways to challenge myself, ignite, keep that fire lit, and, climb that next mountain, man. I feel like there's still more out there for me. I'm not through being my greatest yet. I still think that that's yet to come. And, I'm searching for it. I'm seeking it, and I'm motivated to find it.
Hell yeah. Well, you fired me up, and I hope that some viewers or some listeners get fired up too listening to you talk. So I appreciate you coming on, and that's a show.